My name is Maria Brahma, Dr. Maria Brahma, and I'm your host this evening. It's such an incredible pleasure for me to get to host this wonderful session. Welcome everybody to the Native American Heritage Month 2022 speaker series. We are deeply and broadly excited to have all of you here today and are so thankful on a Friday evening to have you here. Before we begin, I want to tell you a little bit about the Center for Global Partnerships and Learning. In partnership with Pepperdine University Graduate School of Education and Psychology, the Education Division, the Center for Global Partnerships and Learning offers a wide range of programs that we're so proud and excited about. The programs are geared towards the advancement of student scholarship. We serve as a gateway for students and alumni to be able to develop their skills, elevate their voices, and develop their research acumen. Our focus is in the following areas: our Scholarship Without Borders journal that we're so proud of. We just got DOIs for our articles, and we're just so thrilled for that. This publication continues to be elevated in numerous ways. So we're so excited about that. We have collaborative research opportunities. We have certificates, workshops, seminars, publication and conference presentation support. We are here to help you elevate your scholarship and get your voices elevated. And we're all really committed to this effort. We strive to enhance the student experience and ensure that our students have access and support to in furthering their academic scholarly activity. Okay, so let me tell you a little bit about Dr. Santiago. We are so thrilled to have her here today. I'm so personally excited and proud, having been part of Dr. Santiago's dissertation committee and really known and gotten to be part of her dissertation journey from start to finish. And oh my gosh, what a pleasure and privilege that was. Let me tell you a little bit about Dr. Tatiana. Dr. Tatiana Kuʻuleialoha Santiago. She is a site coordinator in the Windward Oahu District, who provides college and career support for middle school and high school students in Hawaii. Tatiana believes that it takes a village to raise a child, and that we all have a role to increase capacity for families and communities to thrive. Dr. Tatiana Santiago was born in Kahuku, Hawaii, and has been a resident there for 30 years. She graduated with a BA of Science in Community Health Science from the University of Nevada, Reno, and received her MA from the University of Hawai'i at Mānoa, with a focus on global indigeneity and institutional effectiveness. So cool. Her main field of expertise involves student services with the goal of achieving success by creating supportive support programs and developing future leaders. Tatiana is passionate about growing indigenous communities through education and empowering them to reach their greatest potential. Please welcome Dr. Tatiana Santiago as we listen to her present on Hawaiian leadership. Dr. Santiago, I'm so pleased to have you take it away.
Awesome. Aloha mai kako, everyone. Hi, everyone. My name is Tatiana Kuʻuleialoha Santiago. Thank you, Dr. Brahme, for just that introduction. I'm really excited to be here today to just talk about my doctoral journey, talk about what I learned in my dissertation, and just really elevate the Hawaiian culture that I was raised in and how it has impacted my leadership and my leadership style. And so Thank you for the introduction. Two words that kind of just stood out to me from being in this program and this journey that I was on is growth and gratitude. So from where I started in the program to where I am now, I have just grown as an individual, grown as a leader, grown as a community member, and even grown in my career and the job that I'm in now. So when I first started, I was just a counselor working with my high school students, helping them with college classes. Now, at the end of this program, I am running a grant called Gear Up Hawaiʻi, really focused on all of our middle schools and high schools and helping them plan out what college and career opportunities look like for these students. And I truly believe that it was from this program at Pepperdine that I was able to kind of expand my thinking, expand my purpose and what I was, thinking of doing at first to what I'm doing now. Is just pretty amazing for me to see that I'm, where I'm at and what I'm doing now. So thank you to Dr. Brahmit, Dr. Miramontes, who was really a big, huge supporter and encouragement for me to kind of go the path that I went for my dissertation. So aloha everyone. I am from Hawaii, born and raised there for the past 30 years. The island of Oahu, for those of you guys who kind of know what Hawaii is like, Oahu is where they have Honolulu and Waikiki. But I live in a small country town called Kahuku. It is probably 2,000 people, mostly Native Hawaiians, Polynesian people. We have some Filipino as well that live in that area. It is a 2-mile radius, so very small. We have a church, we have a high school, middle school, and a hospital there. And the fact that I'm here today, I'm just like so amazed that I can share with you just things that I've learned. A little bit about Hawaii. So we are all about names, place names, right? So just my middle name in general, Kuʻuleialoha, we were talking about this earlier, means my lei of love. And I got that name from my parents wanting to keep our family names together. So one of my auntie's names is Kuʻulei, which means my lei, and then Leialoha, which is lei of love. And so really my kuleana or responsibility as in my family is to be that connector, be that person to kind of bring everyone together. And that's what my name stands for. That's kind of the story behind my name. In Hawaii, we also have names for places and wind and rain. So where I'm from, our ahupua'a or land division, kind of like what you guys call like a city, is the ahupua'a of Kahuku. Within there, our wind is called ahamanu. Ahamanu means a bird gathering place of the birds. And we actually have a bird sanctuary in our community where birds nest and feed off of. So our wind, ahamanu, very important, very significant. Our rain is called kani ko'oko'o. It actually means literally the cane tapping rain. So if you guys were to picture yourself in like a bamboo forest, that rain that you hear in a bamboo forest is the rain that surrounds my place. So kani ko'oko'o. And then Kawela Bay. So if you guys know Hawaii, you guys know where Turtle Bay Resort is. I think they've filmed a lot of movies there. That bay is actually called Kawela Bay. And so Kawela Bay is the bay that surrounds where I'm from. And I really wanted to highlight that because in Hawaii, where you're from is very key to who you are. And continuing those place names and naming them and making them known really kind of signifies like where you're from and your place. So I wanted to kind of share that with you folks about where I'm from and what our wind, rain, and seas are called. So that's where I'm from. What do I do? So I actually work with our middle school and high school students on the windward side of the island, helping them to figure out what their plans are after high school. So whether it's going into college, whether it's going into the workforce, careers, some people go into the military, right? Really helping them to navigate that and provide the support and resources for them. So my goal is to kind of create this pipeline and pathway for our students. Prior to that job, I was an early college counselor. at one of our community colleges, and then also an advisor for the Educational Talent Search Program, which is a federal program as well. I don't know if you guys have heard of that, but same thing, helping students think about their plans after high school. And then I also sat on a committee called Ke Kumupali, which is a Native Hawaiian community on our, I guess, a group of advisors on our campus that really was advocating for our Native Hawaiian students at the community college that I worked for. So really making sure that we were supporting and targeting that group, because in our mission statement, we said we are here to support, our Native Hawaiian students. So we wanted to make sure that the institution was aligning with that mission. But yeah, that's just a little bit about myself and where I'm from. And yeah, hopefully that answered it. But yeah, nice to see you all today. And then feel free, if you guys have any questions, just let me know. I wanted this to be more of a talk story, casual type of conversation about my doctoral journey and my dissertation. So yeah, just let me know if you guys have any questions.
Well, I'll go ahead and start. And since we were talking about your name and place names and the significance of where you're from, and I'm so happy to see Sasheen, our Native American doctoral student who just presented a few days ago. It's such a beautiful presentation here. Indigenous communities, I love understanding and learning about the significance of where you're from and how that, how you're talking about how that is included in your name, in your very own name and so forth. How does that play into moving around in the world and learning and expanding kind of your perspective? So you got your degree at Pepperdine and so forth. So you certainly ventured out of your own community. Is that sort of commitment to the home community in any way a barrier to expanding vision and learning and so forth from beyond that home community?
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Brahme, for that question. For me, it's more of not a barrier, but I think a strength from my leadership and my leadership style. One thing I learned about in my dissertation was the value and the importance of bringing your culture and your background and the things that you've learned into your leadership style, into how you lead organizations. Before coming to Pepperdine, I really didn't bring my values and my culture into that space, right? But now I'm like, oh, this is something that everybody needs to hear. This is something that the world needs to hear about, these key, leadership values, these key things that we as Native Hawaiians do naturally, should be expressed in the way we lead our organizations. And so that was something that I was like, oh my gosh, this needs to be shared, not just within Hawaii, but people who are trying to come to Hawaii, or people who have no idea about Native Hawaiian culture. These are some of the values that we hold as people. And so some of the things from my dissertation that I found was just how important it is as leaders to be your authentic self, use those values that you've learned. So for example, some of the values and characteristics that I found from my dissertation was this sense of aloha and pono, or this sense of compassion and doing what is right in the spaces that you're in. So a lot of Hawaiians use that aloha and pono within the decisions that they make. And so using those values within your organization is super important. Hawaiians are very connected to their land, or aina, because we're just surrounded by natural resources. Water, land is really what feeds us. So Native Hawaiians believe that we are connected to the land, that our ancestors are the land. So we need to our job or kuleana responsibility is to take care of that land. And, you know, I think just from years of what's happened to Hawaii in regards to colonization and just the erasing of our culture and our language really did a detriment to Hawaii. And so now as indigenous people, as Kanaka Maoli or Native Hawaiian, we are really fighting to continue our culture and our traditions and the things that we value, but including them in the systems and the organizations that we are currently, you know, a part of. So when I was, you know, talking about my dissertation, I'm like, oh man, more people need to learn about, you know, the history of Hawaii and the people of Hawaii, because there's so much that you can take from our culture and our people that you can use within your spaces too. So that was a highlight for me, Dr. Brahma, is that it wasn't really a barrier. It was more of a strength and more of something that I wanted to share with other people because it's very valuable anywhere. Yeah.
Thank you so much for that. That's so interesting. You know, when we were talking about your research as your study was expanding, as your preparation for your data gathering, you were, you know, your lit review and looking at research. I know that we talked a little bit about a kind of a parallel, or what you call sort of a sister sort of population or community that is the Maori population in New Zealand. Is that right? Am I right about that?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about the parallels that you saw there between these two populations? I found that so fascinating, and I'd never heard about that sort of relationship or comparison before.
Yeah, so our cultures are very similar. Because Hawaiians are voyagers, are navigators, we've all kind of come from this, we call it kahiki or Tahiti, right? So we are all kind of connected in Polynesia. But with the Maoris in particular, when you look at our language, there are just so many kind of similarities that we hold in the pride of our language, the pride of our culture, the pride of continuing it to multiple generations. So your genealogy and what that means, and the stories, or mo'olelo, we call it mo'olelo, that we share, all kind of are similar. And so when I was looking at my research, I had to go in and look at some of the other indigenous peoples and nations to really get an idea of what were some of the similarities and even some of the differences. So Maori stood out to me because of their culture, but also their role with their colonizer, you know, and that relationship that they had, and that they were able to do more, I feel like, in continue their language, continue their culture. It was actually encouraged versus in Hawaii. You know, my grandparents, if they were talking in Hawaiian in Olelo Hawaii, they were punished. They were not encouraged to speak their language, right? So there are some similarities and differences. And so for me, it was important to see, you know, what the Maori culture was like, and also what Hawaiian culture, how that aligned, and, you know, how we're kind of sisters and brothers in this fight. So yeah, I don't want to say fight like it's a fight. It's more of like, in the spaces that we're in and the systems that we're a part of, really bringing to light and really elevating our culture and our language is super important. So like the fact that I'm talking about, you know, Native American Heritage Month or Native Hawaiian Month, we have something called La Ku'oko'a, which is celebrating our independence, celebrating our sovereignty. As a people, like we were a nation before the United States came and colonized us, right? So what did that look like? What was that for us? And so that's our thriving language within the schools, our culture and our dance, our hula and our mele, and having that be a part of education. we have something called aina-based education or land-based, place-based education. So really highlighting that and showing the things that we're doing that are strengths in building this kind of resilient and I would say this restorative kind of culture, or like this renaissance that never ends. And I just want it to continue and to grow, right? So the fact that we're now bringing back La Kuʻokoʻa, or our Day of Sovereignty, our Day of Independence, because there were other countries that acknowledged us, right? France, these, countries saying that, yeah, Hawaii is a nation. Hawaii is their own. They had their monarchy, they had their kingdom, they had their way of governing their people. So it's really celebrating that and ensuring that that continues. So yeah. I kind of went off on a tangent about La Kuʻokoʻa Day, but
I love it. No.
Figure I make that, that plug.
No, it's so great and it's so fascinating and all ties in. I want to encourage everybody here to please, feel free to ask your questions and express, your curiosity and your comments and so forth. So I do want to talk a little bit about Hawaiian leadership, because we talked about that. We've had just sort of like the beginnings of conversations about this based on your doctoral study, because what came out in your doctoral study really was so fascinating in terms of what could emerge in terms of, Hawaiian leadership, the Hawaiian leadership style. So I'd love to hear, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I'm just curious, have you had thoughts about this? Because we were talking about this. Where has your brain gone with this idea? Because there is nothing like it yet, but your study points to some really concrete pieces of evidence for Native Hawaiian leadership style. I'd love to hear your thoughts about this at this point.
Yeah, I should probably share the story before even starting my dissertation, where this idea came from and how I came about to develop this kind of Native Hawaiian leadership style. That was not my topic at first for my dissertation. My topic was going to be more on advising and counseling for students during COVID. But then it was just interesting how it changed, right? After my comp exams, during the program I was going through, I was part of a community movement called Kukia'i Kahuku, or Protectors of Kahuku. And we were trying to stop the development of these big wind turbines in our community, because they were going to surround our neighborhood, and they were going to, how should I say this, build it right over our high school and our elementary school. And it was just too close to my backyard and our neighborhoods, right? So a lot of us Native people got together, and actually not even Native Hawaiians, we had people from all over coming to support us to really stop the development of, I'd say now they're going to build 8 turbines. Now we have about 20 something turbines in our little 2-mile community, right? And so to us as Native Hawaiians, land is important, resources are important. So I was part of this movement, this group in my community that was really trying to not have these turbines built, right? And so when I looked at it, I'm like, okay, that's going to be my topic. I'm going to talk about, this not only this community movement, but what's happening with the development in Hawaii, right? And then I was like, oh, but it's not even about that. It's about leadership. It comes down to the policies. It comes down to governance. It comes down to the fact that we voiced our concerns and things just didn't happen. Why is that so? What was the process leading up to why we were in the situation that we're in? And so that's when I changed to more like, okay, leadership in Hawaii. What does that look like? What are some things that other communities and organizations in Hawaii are struggling with? And what are some ways that they're navigating through those challenges, especially leaders? So some of the things that they shared in my research was this idea of continuity of culture, making sure that aloha and pono is in all the decisions that we make. Laulima and ohana, so working together as like a family unit, which means having a shared vision, building trust, making sure that the places that you're in are safe spaces is important for leaders in Hawaii. Kuleana, or responsibility, so the strengths of Native Hawaiians. One strength that we have in Hawaii is our natural resources and is the fact that it protects us and it feeds us and it sustains us. But sometimes that is not seen by state entities, by businessmen, developers who want to come in and use all of those precious resources that we're trying to take care of. So knowing our kuleana and our role and responsibility. And then lastly, leading by example, or this idea of servant leadership, really then paving the way for our next generation, right? So we can't just talk about it. It's more of, okay, now what are we going to do about it? And so these are some of the themes that came out of me interviewing leaders in Hawaii who are part of organizations, whether it was in the business sector, education, even some in our government system, seeing what their thoughts are about Hawaii and where we're at as a state. And so, wow, I ended up coming up with all of these. I think there are like 20 something unique characteristics about Hawaii and about leadership. But of course, there are also some challenges too that they came up with, which was, bureaucracies and old systems, infrastructure, like just all these things that were coming against how us as Native Hawaiians were raised, we're taught to lead, we're taught to take care of our families. And so I was really looking at that, what were the challenges and what can we share with the next generation of leaders who are going through this same thing, right? And so I wasn't able to really dive deep into the challenges. That's one thing that I really wanted to go into more is, okay, how have you then navigated through these challenges? But for me, I got to just really see identify what those unique values and characteristics are of Native Hawaiian leaders, and then create this model that future leaders can use if they're, in similar situations. So yeah, I was pretty amazed to see what the model came out like, and yeah, how it's kind of leading me now. So yeah.
So Tatiana, can I ask, how did the whole Hawaiian spiritualism, because there was an impact, right, to your study, how did that show up for your study? If you can share a little bit about the impact and just what you took from that.
Yeah, I mean, for Hawaiians, they believe in something called aloha aina, or really taking care of the land so that it can take care of you. Our mountains are very important. I have the picture of the ko'olaus. This is the mountain, behind my house, because of its connection to Keokua, or the heavenlies, right? And that then feeds into the people of Hawaii. And so this spiritual component, or these values that have come from it, really stems from the basic culture of Hawaii and the background of Hawaii. So Hawaiians believe that they are connected to the land, they're tied to the land. They see land as a family member, as an ancestor. So we have a kalo plant. I don't know if you guys know, kalo is like our life-giving plant, right? We believe that we are connected to haloa, or the kalo plant. And if our kalo plant is thriving, then Hawaiians are thriving, right? So this idea that you are, you're not just your own, you're a part of something greater than you, whether it's your family, your community, our lahui, or our group in Hawaii, our native people, and everything we do is connected. I think that's what's important to know. Like every decision you make, every thought you think, everything is connected to each other, to land, and to culture. And so that's, I think, the spirituality piece to Dr. Maramontes that was highlighted in my dissertation was just where that stems from and how it impacts us as Hawaiians. Yeah, the fact that these values are also, I think, very spiritual. So aloha and pono, aloha is the ha, or the breath of heavenlies, of keakua, of love, of compassion, right? So that's actually what aloha means. And sometimes people are like, they just use it like it's just a regular, term. Like, no, there is like, when you say aloha, that means you're breathing your breath, your love, your compassion into someone, right? So that is, when you break it down, the importance of the words and what that means. Pono, doing what's right. Our state motto is Uamau Ke'e o Ka'aina Iku Pono. So the life of the land is perpetuated in righteousness. Righteousness meaning within you, like the pono that you have will impact other people. The righteousness that you exude will impact someone. So making sure that you do what's right for those in your in Hawaii, in your family. And yeah, the connection to ohana and family, I think, is something that's spiritual as well, right? Like we have something called mo'okuauhau, or genealogies. So as a Hawaiian, you trace back your ancestry, right, as far as you can go, and you have your stories about your great-grandparents, your grandparents, your parents, and what are some of the values that they hold. And I was just talking to my family about this, like, man, are we continuing this mo'okuauhau, or this generational values that we hold, because we're living in such a different time now that I think people need that, right? People need to continue their genealogies and their stories and the values that they hold, because the world really needs to see that and needs to hear that. And so that was one thing that came out of my dissertation too, which is the importance of mo'okuauhau, or genealogies. And then also mo'olelo, or stories, like these stories that we don't want to forget, or these stories that are a part of our culture, whether it's the kalo plant, whether it's legends of Hawaii, stories of places, how that ties into leadership, into continuity of culture, making sure that we're keeping our stories alive, I think is something that I learned too from my dissertation. Like everybody that I was able to interview just had story after story that I really wanted to capture what that value was, or what were the things that they were trying to share within that story. And so, yeah, that is part of it too. Dr. Maramontes is just mo'olelo stories, mo'okuauhau, genealogy, and then how these values kind of shape who you are and your family in Hawaii. So, yeah.
Thank you. You mentioned that there's and I'm not even going to try, but the educational system within the schools, that there's a land-based curriculum. Can you speak a little bit more? I find that intriguing. How you've recaptured the traditions of the Native Hawaiians back into the educational system.
Yeah, so now we're using our fish ponds, our kalo fields, our places in the community as outdoor classrooms, and where learning takes place, right? So it's not, instead of just the four walls, sit at your desk, listen to this teacher and take your test. Like now it's going out into these places, going out into the fish ponds, learning about, hey, how do we solve this issue of not having any fish in this fish pond? Like what are those causes? How does science and math, what does that look like in the fish pond, right? So it's really taking the classroom out into the aina, into the land, because that's how our students learn best, is within their backyard, within the places that they're familiar. So we're starting to do that in our schools now. Teachers are going through like professional development trainings to create their curriculum within the class, like the fish pond or the the lo'i patch or the kalo patches. And I just think that's brilliant. Like the fact that we can, take them outside, have them learn in the space that they're comfortable, the space that they know, and really help them solve a problem within their community, right? So the big part of it is restoring these places, because a lot of these places were, houses were built next to them, businesses were built next to them, and they either got overgrown or weren't taken care of. So now even students are helping to restore it, but then use it as a classroom and a place where they can do their learning. And so that's one example. Another example is out on the va'a, or the canoe, what we call it. Our people were navigators, they were voyagers. So taking these students out onto the va'a, out into the ocean, to really learn about how the stars can help you navigate around the world. Like, it's just amazing how brilliant Hawaiians are. Like, they don't need like GPS to get from one place to another. Like, they can go on the stars, the sun, and the moon. Like, it's just amazing. But now students are kind of being taught in that way, and students are then like wanting to then be voyagers, right? So those strengths, those things that we can instill within our students to see that, hey, this is part of who you are, because a lot of them don't see that in just a regular classroom setting, right? So those are some things that you can see students' faces just light up when you take them out to the ocean, or you take them out to their land. They're just amazed. So that's what we're doing with our students now, which before never quite happened. Honestly, it was just a place where you go and you do service, like community service. You go help and restore the fish pond, but now we're seeing it more as a outdoor classroom. So yeah, it's good.
Thank you for that. That's really informative. I'm curious. In a previous conversation, we talked a little bit about not apprenticeship programs, vocational programs, and how the shift that you're seeing in Hawaii with natives and their career trajectories. Do you want to speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. I think for me, I was just amazed in my dissertation how many Native Hawaiian scholars that I saw. Like, I was like, oh my gosh, like coming to Pepperdine, honestly, I was like, am I the only Native Hawaiian? Which I wasn't. Like, there was one more girl, Leahi Hall, who was also a Native Hawaiian. I was like, yes, I got to see her dissertation. I was just so encouraged and so inspired. But yeah, to see what our Native Hawaiian people are doing nowadays, being in governance, being in leadership positions. The reason why I went back to school too was because when at the community college that I worked, there was no Native Hawaiian leaders, So really seeing this shift in having more Native Hawaiians be in leadership positions within education, running their own businesses. So I was telling them that we have this group called CNHA, or Council for Native Hawaiian Advancement. And they are just doing amazing things for Hawaiians and getting them, certified for jobs, getting them in homes, getting them to be leaders, having them run their own businesses. And so this is actually happening within a Native Hawaiian group in Hawaii. And they're really paving the way to say, like, okay, let's uplift our lahui. Let's get our people to see that they can do it. They can go to college. They can have a job that pays decent in Hawaii. Can I just say, it is so expensive to live here in Hawaii, right? So how are we helping our people to get the degree or palapala, get the certificate that they need to have a job where they can live in Hawaii? I think that's one of our biggest problems, is just not being able to afford to live here anymore, where our families, my family lived here for 50, 60 something years, right? But now having to move to Las Vegas, like that should not happen. And so this group, I'm just so amazed by them, because they're helping our people to get money to go to college, to be in a home in Hawaii, to get their workforce training or whatever it is, help them start their own business. And it's just amazing to see that happen and to even be a part of it. So I want to go and learn more about it and how I can support them, because I think they're doing just great work within Hawaii. So yeah, hopefully that answered your question. Definitely seeing more Hawaiians in leadership positions, which I'm just, I think that's for me the ultimate goal. And that's really why I went back. Many of my students, I'm the first in my family to really go to get my doctorate. They're all like, doctorate, can you help me? Like, I'm not feeling well. I'm like, no, guys, that's not the kind of doctor that we're talking about here. Like, I mean, yes, I can help you feel better, but so those kinds of things, like helping my students see that, hey, if I can do it, you can do it too. So that was a big driving motivator for me to continue and to finish. I told my students, they were starting their college journey and I was starting mine. I'm like, hey guys, we're gonna finish this together. You guys are gonna finish college. I'm gonna get this doctorate. And we ended up doing that. I had about 3 students who got their high school diploma and their college degree at the same time. And it was about the same time that I was finishing up some coursework at Pepperdine. So to see that and to see that they were Native Hawaiian was just amazing. So that's what I want to continue. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. And what a cool thing to be completing your degree together with your students. That's awesome. Yeah, I bet they were inspired by your work. And
it was kind of like a competition, like, okay, guys, you're making this goal, you know, who was going to get it? And what was interesting is now families and parents were starting to go back to school. So that's what I saw too. Like, we started to create this culture and this environment of like, okay, my kid's going to school. I never went. Maybe now it's my time to go. So we kind of built this, this hui of like, we're going to get this done and we're going to get our degrees. So it was amazing to see. And now they're going off and starting their own businesses and doing amazing things. So yeah.
So cool.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Wow. Well, congratulations on that and your influence. That's really not a small thing. That's really wonderful. Yeah. You know, one thing that I do want to kind of comment on that you were mentioning that we've been talking about at the center, Dr. Gabby and I, and with some of our recent speakers, particularly, and in terms of what's happening in scholarship. So you mentioned that the lack of Native Hawaiian scholarship. However, you know, maybe in coursework and so forth, although you made contact with some amazing Native American scholars, and you have a colleague, you know, from Pepperdine, who both of you now are maybe the newest Native Hawaiian scholars. But that's something that is really fascinating. And, you know, me as a librarian, I'm really becoming super interested in what's going on. You know, I love literature about literature. That's kind of where I live. That's my literature jam. Geek as I am, literature geek as I am, but it's really interesting to look at what's happening and what's emerging in the literature about literature, right? And what we see about, you know, who is emerging and whose voice needs to be heard in scholarship. So, for example, and this is it's something that I learned relatively recently. I should have known this. It's from this wonderful book that I'm using in one of my classes, writing your journal article in 12 weeks. It's called by last name of the author is Belcher. But she talks about citation values. She talks about what your responsibility as an author is in terms of who you're citing in your work, which is so fascinating. And one of the examples she uses is a philosophy journal that published a special issue on the Black Lives Matter movement within, well, it's a relatively new movement. So I'm not sure exactly when but when that issue was examined, none of the authors, not a single one of the authors was Black or African American. So, and oh my goodness, they took a whole lot of criticism, as they should have, for that special issue and their lack of oversight in terms of what authors were being included in that scholarship. So, the whole idea of who we're citing when we're talking about issues. So if we're writing about Native Hawaiian issues, and you have looked at, you really know the Native Hawaiian scholars, but it's so fascinating to really be gaining an understanding and really developing a concern. For example, if we're writing about medicine, let's say, and we know that 40% of medical professionals are female, are we citing 40% of medical professionals in the research that we're conducting and so forth? So it's absolutely significant and so important going forward that we really look at these issues and that we really highlight the research of the scholars who are, and I'm using this like native to the discipline in question, right? And are we looking equitably at that in terms of men and women and people of color and indigenous peoples and folks who are native to whatever continent we're studying and so forth? These things, it's a new, unfortunately new, but emerging scholarship and focus that is gaining ground and thankfully, right? Thankfully, we're learning that we need to represent the voices that know the disciplines, that know the geography, that know the customs, that know the traditions and all of that. So I love everything that you're doing, and I would love to hear just your thoughts about that, based on the work that you did for your dissertation and what you've kind of learned from that.
Yeah, that was really key for my literature review, was to make sure that I highlighted Native Hawaiian scholars. I think what helped me though was there were other dissertations that were done at the University of Hawai'i at Mānoa. And so I got to look at some of their dissertations and looked at who they included within their study. And I just started to see some commonalities between these dissertations. Unlike Noelani Goodyear Ka'opua was talking about settler colonialism, right? So pulling out those. Manulani Meyer was talking about Kapualoha and Aloha Aina, right? And so making sure I included that. So it's kind of seeing common themes as well within the dissertations that I was looking at and some of the literature. Haunani K. Trask, wow, what an amazing scholar, that she's in multiple articles about sovereignty and the impacts of colonization in Hawaii. And she has this thing that says, we are not American. Like, she just goes full force on our nationhood and our kingdom of Hawaii, right? So really pulling out these scholars and then not losing their voice, not losing their where they're coming from within the art. So the context of the article kind of helped me to shape my literature review, like the things that I wanted to highlight, whether it was culture, colonization, cases in Hawaii. So I looked at different cases where they were protecting, like Kaho'olawe, one of the islands, they were protecting water rights. They were protecting, what was the other one I looked at? Oh, Mauna Kea, right? This mountain that we have that's super sacred. So I had to look at who are those people within those, who are sharing about those cases and those, and so I actually had to look at cases as well. And then what they were saying about it and pulling out those scholars. And so, man, I ended up having so many different Native Hawaiian scholars, also different areas that they were focused in. And so for me, it was just making sure that I had them all within the areas that they were really passionate about. And then seeing how I can, whether they had the same ideas or different ideas. Like, I think that was a big part, was seeing the differences, right? Like, and Dr. Brahma, you told me about that, you know, like, okay, this is great. They all support this, but who doesn't support this amongst your group, right? So like really kind of seeing it from both sides. But once you start, it's just so hard to like stop. Like, you're like, oh my gosh, she cited this person and then this person cited this. So it kind of just naturally happens as you're trying to find out more about, you know, the topics and the things that goes along with your study. So, but you're right, very important to include our native scholars and our native people in this. And so when I saw how many Native Hawaiian scholars there were, like I was just amazed. I was like, oh wow, I am a part of this this bigger hui and this bigger group of people. And so yeah, that was good. Thank you for kind of helping me navigate that though, because it was, you guys there's so much articles and so much research out there, like trying to figure out which one to use. I think for me was just seeing the common threads and themes among dissertations and articles. So that helped me. Yeah.
Thank you so much. That's so great. And creating that with your scholarship, with your dissertation, then that in and of itself does create community. And just in the fact that you are citing these other scholars and creating within your work a relationship with their research, that is so cool. Yeah. So I'm so glad to hear that. It was so exciting, really exciting to see your dissertation and your literature review develop and include these amazing people. It's so cool. So I'm wondering now, sort of in the other kind of direction of Native Hawaiians, in terms of your sense of leadership and allegiance to Hawaiian principles and culture and community, how do you see that working in terms of younger folks, like, you know, kids, like high school youngsters? Does the culture reach effectively in that direction? You talked a little bit about some programs and so forth. Is that working well?
That's a good question.
And maybe you don't know, but
yeah. I think I would like to see it more within, you know, our classrooms and our schools. I think for Hawaiians, we just do it naturally. So to put like even my motto, I'm like, we do this, right? And so how is it playing out right now? You know, I think that's where my next steps are, is really then getting this into our, I work with principals and even with some school staff. So just seeing how we can use this at a summit, or use this when we're looking at our younger generation leaders. I think a big part of it is just emulating it first, right? So for me, it was reflecting on, am I this leader first? Like, am I, am I leading out of my culture, leading out of my values, leading out of things that I cherish? Or am I just kind of going with what, everybody in the system does, or going with these more Western ideals? So once that I kind of honed in on that, now it's then, okay, the spaces that I'm going, am I taking this there, right? Am I acting in righteousness and compassion? Am I, operating out of my strengths and my responsibility? I would like to see this in our schools and with our next generation. However, I think we're very far from trying to get that into our schools. And it's really going to take just this community effort. That's why I like that Council for Native Hawaiian Advancement, and maybe that's some place that I'll start. Or even I was a part of a Native Hawaiian Education Association. So even presenting this study and this research there, because many of those people are doing similar things. I think it's just a matter of having us kind of link arms and work together to see this happen for our students. And so, yeah, I'm more of a doer. It's really weird. I'm more of like a servant leader, right? So I'm just going to go out and do it and not even think about, okay, maybe I should share this with the people that I'm working with, So I would love to see this kind of shared across different schools and organizations. And that was the whole goal of this dissertation. Like, if you are in Hawaii and you want to start an organization, like, these are some of the values you should understand before working with Native Hawaiians. Like, you should know what aloha and pono is. You should know what kuleana and what our strengths are as Kanaka, our relationship to the land. So that was kind of where I was like going with it, because many people within the system have just no idea within Hawaii, and then people outside, who are coming into Hawaii, like, hey, these are some things you should really read into and look into before you want to start anything or do anything here. So yeah, next generation, I do see this, I call it a wave. Like, I am seeing a wave of younger Native Hawaiians now taking the reign, right? So for us, kupuna is the ancestors, our grandparents, our elders, they come first, right? Now we're seeing a wave of what we call mana wahine, or just women who are just empowered to show like how important culture is to them, and to really stand up for what they believe in. And then now it's bringing our younger keiki, our children, our youth, right, into this movement, which they're already a part of. And the crazy thing with social media now is that it is just spreading like our culture and our values are just spreading quicker, I think, than before, right? So we're seeing now, even my sister, who's at University of Hawai'i at Mānoa, she is a part of this Native Hawaiian scholarship group and doing Aina-based work. And so it's just amazing to see the next generation come up and start to continue our culture and continue these values. So yeah, and I am just one part of it. If I can, help one student or one classroom or one teacher and principal see the value in this, then that's what I'm passionate about. So yeah.
That's gorgeous. And I think you've already done that and more, honestly. So wonderful. We are, oh my gosh, we're about at the end. We are at the end of this. Oh my gosh, this time flies. This has been so incredibly fun. I want to be sure if anybody has any questions that you have wanted to ask, we can squeeze those in. But also really thank you so much, Dr. Santiago, for this incredible sharing of what you've learned, what you know, and your influence and excitement about your work. And it's just been so valuable for all of us, and we're so excited for you. So congratulations on the amazing work that you've done, and thank you for spending time with us today and sharing about your work and your thoughts about your work and where you see this work going. It's fantastic. Congratulations and thank you.
Thank you, everyone. This was awesome. I'm so glad I got to talk about the things that I love, talk about my culture, my community. And so, yeah, thank you guys so much. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. And yeah, you guys, I don't know where you are in your journey or, what you guys are involved in, but yeah, just keep doing good work and, keep your whatever values and culture that you guys are a part of, keep that going. And yeah, that's our strength. So awesome. Thank you guys.
Beautiful. Thank you everyone so much. Have a fantastic evening, a beautiful weekend, and please join us for our upcoming events. They're all fantastic. As you know, we have the best speakers. We love you and we love them. We love all of you guys. So thank you so much for being here and for sharing.